This is Business Therapy, healing businesses from the inside out through communication and emotional intelligence. I'm Diane Hansen, management consultant, and with me co-host Christine Salvo, therapist, advanced certified mediator, and certified hypnotherapist.
Good morning, everyone. Hello.
Good morning, everybody. And today on the show, we have Stephanie Menjivar, who is the founder and art business mentor behind Menji Media, a creative marketing and business development consultancy pushing artists and creative professionals to reach their highest potential. Her art business mentorship platform has programs that help artists magnetically attract their loyal buyers and collectors. From coaching visual artists of all levels with online training programs to hosting creative workshops and interviewing game changing artists about their journeys, Stephanie opens the doors of new opportunities for creatives. Her mission is to make the art world more accessible by teaching artists how to build profitable, independent careers and sharing their stories with everyday people outside of the art world. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to talk about our topic today. And I love what you do for artists and connecting them with their stories about works of art. How did you get started in this?
So, I've been surrounded by art since I was a child. My dad was a graphic designer and he was an artist. And since I was a kid, I visited many museums. Years later, I started working in the art world. I worked in museums, I worked in art galleries, I worked at art fairs. And one thing I started noticing is that there was a big disconnect between art buyers and artists, and it has been controlled by a very small group of people for a very long time. And a lot of the time, everyday people tend to think that the art world is full of elite people, that they don't understand art. So that's what inspired me to go ahead and teach artists the power of sharing their story, the power of being able to promote their work so that they could independently develop their careers and teach people about their work without feeling like they were too elite or they were part of this secret club that other people couldn't understand.
Oh, wow. I'm loving every second of you talking. Because when I think of fine art, I think of art dealer. I think of,
Yep.
There's specific galleries. I'm a fine art. I love it too. I'm very much in art. I always have been. I love museums and I purchase. And you talk to the dealer and they kind of give you sometimes a piece of paper or there's a little bio in front of the art about the artist, right? And that's it. That's it. You either have to fall in love with the art or not. But I so agree that one of my favorite quotes I tell people is I usually say, I'm like a piece of art. I'm going to make you feel something.
That's great.
Right? Because the whole purpose of art, from my perspective, is it's just supposed to make you feel not good, not bad, not this, that. But whenever you look at art, it will inspire some kind of feeling. So, when you go to the museum and you see the one line on the paper and you're like, that makes me feel some kind of way because I'm frustrated that that's fine art or it's brilliant or I see, right? So, but so often the artist's story is lost. So in some ways, I can really see how the art itself is only like 50% there.
Yes, I completely agree. One of the biggest things that I learned in art is that art can be anything as long as there's an idea behind it, which I completely agree. But like you said, a lot of the time, these ideas are lost because either artists, aren't very vocal about the story behind their work, or we encounter somebody that, might profile us because they think that we don't have enough money or we don't look a certain way that would spend on a specific art piece. And I think everyone should connect with art. One thing I tell people that aren't within the art world or that don't visit museums often is that it's okay not to like an art piece and to be vocal about it because sometimes you go to a museum and you might not understand something, you might read the labels and you're like, okay, I don't like it, but you feel kind of ashamed of keeping those feelings in because you feel like you're supposed to understand it, or if you say that you don't like an art piece that people will think you're dumb. But I'm part of the mentality that whether you like an art piece or not, it should be an open dialogue.
Absolutely. I would believe that most artists would feel that way too. So again, like if art is supposed to make you feel, it helps you get more in touch with yourself, because when we're looking at something, even if I don't like it, now I get to articulate and self-explore and go, why? Why don't I like it? And then if we go down to preferences, it's just not my palette. It's just not my style. Cool. It's a preference thing. But if it's more than that, then there really could be some psychological things going on underneath, you know?
For sure.
I love the specific area that you work in helping artists tell their stories. Do you find that artists are quite often kind of hamstrung when it comes to, explaining their work or explaining the story behind their work?
Yeah, so even for me, because I've created artwork in the past, and one thing I've noticed is that artists tend to be very shy. We tend to spend a lot of time in the studio in our heads, focusing on the little details that go into art pieces. And then when it's time to go out there and be in a show and meet people, if somebody starts to ask you, "Oh, what is this work about?" or "Can you tell me more about it?" Some artists, they'll actually freeze up because they're not used to so openly being vulnerable about the stories and the things behind the artwork. Or another thing that might happen is that sometimes they get stuck in the technicalities. Somebody will say, "Oh, I really love your work," and they'll say, "Oh, thank you, but I should have done this better," or "I should have painted this stroke this way." And it's like, no, please, no, don't say what you didn't do. Just tell why this is so great, and inspire the person that's in front of you.
So what I would kind of say to that, Stephanie, and my curiosity based on what you know and all these interactions that you've had, is because art really, it's a vulnerability. It's very vulnerable to show your art, because our art is an extension of who we are on some level.
Yes.
And you're like revealing your soul. They're seeing inside either your head, your heart, your emotional life, your spiritual life. There's something being revealed. And because, a lot of the people I work with, I'm often asking people to create something creative for therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And they get blocked immediately because the very next thing is judgment. If I create, it's going to be judged. And once it's judged, it's good, it's bad, it's this, it's that. And so much of that fear of vulnerability is that piece right there. It just won't be accepted for what it is, which is, like you said, a piece of art with an idea. Now, not only am I exposed, but they might attack me. They might attack my character. They might go deeper than the piece of art, right? To tell me I'm not right or wrong, not the art. I'm just kind of curious on if you've experienced any of that.
Well, that's one of the things that I cover from the beginning. When people go through my programs, I like to tell them that we start working from within. And then once we understand, okay, why you're creating art, what are the things that attract you to a certain topic in your artwork? I sometimes I even specifically ask them, is your work introspective, or are you exploring ideas that have nothing to do with your life?
Ooh, I
Because
love it.
that's what allows you to kind of understand how you're going to talk about your work. Because I always tell artists, you want to create artwork for yourself, of course, but at the end of the day, once the artwork is completed, you want to be able to connect the artwork to somebody that's willing to buy it, because they're the ones that
Right,
are going to sustain your career.
right.
I love that. And the stories behind the art and the stories of the artist. And I'm not thinking about this just in the context of art. I'm thinking about this in the context of anyone who creates something, whether it be, a business or a passion project or, yes, art. But it can be so connecting to be able to tell a story about what drove emotionally, mentally, physically the creation of something. And, in business, we talk about creating hero stories and the stories where you position yourself as the hero, but you went through, in many ways, the hero's journey. So how do you pull these stories out of these artists?
Well, like I said, it starts through this introspective process where I ask them a lot about their interests. I get very comfortable with them. I tell them that, this is them being able to align with people that are just like them. And the more open they are about themselves, the closer people will get to them. So I'll ask them, what are some major events that happened in their life? What are the reasons that they explore certain themes in the artwork? And based on that, we create almost like in a movie, like a character arc, where those would be the main topics that they always come to when it comes to promoting their artwork. So
can you give, I would love to hear like some, maybe 2 or 3 different examples. I'm really curious how this unfolds.
All right. So one client that I had when we first started working together, she was very focused on working with interior designers. And as we started digging deeper and seeing what was going to be the kind of person that she wanted to connect with and she wanted to sell her art to, we realized that she was very connected to empowering women. And everything that revolved around her work was either around fashion, empowering women, or music, or her life in the 80s in New York. So once we deciphered all of those stories, she began telling more of those stories through her work on her social media, in the ways that she promoted herself. And eventually people started connecting with it, and it was like, wow, I love New York in the 80s. I used to go to this place. Or, oh, I love what you have to say and the way that you're talking about women. And that became kind of that story that she developed for promoting her work and going ahead and selling her work and talking about it.
Okay. So if I'm hearing that correctly, what I'm kind of hearing is you're helping them dial in an authentic view, perspective, and experience that can help create an emotional experience with their audience, where they can connect back and kind of help them reflect on their lives too in that way.
Yes.
But it's not about their whole life. So it's not like an autobiography where it's like, let me tell you everything.
No.
It's just a very targeted, specific way of exposing myself, being vulnerable, showing who I am, while also making it purposeful to sell my art.
That's correct. You got it.
Yes, I love that, and I'm just remembering stories that I will naturally tell when I'm explaining why I'm passionate about something in my business. And there are, probably about 2 or 3 kind of core stories that I always go back to as kind of my big why and why I started my business. And it revolves around people slipping through the cracks in organizations, and not taking no as the end all be all. And just these stories that loop back to not just about me, because there's a lot of life to tell there, but why it connects. It's almost why it connects to the buy in a way.
Definitely, yes. And that is, I think, the reason why people connect with stories so much. It's because it has been the way that we've communicated since the beginning of time. During the times of the cavemen, we told stories through drawings. Later on, we were orators. We would sit around the fire and we would tell stories. And over time, different generations told those stories until the printing press was around, and then we started writing books. But stories have always been a core thing in our humanity. And now we're just telling those stories through different mediums like social media, blogs, Zoom. And it's still a big part of our humanity, and it's part of business, and it's part of life.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. I mean, that was really how we passed down history, was storytelling, right? And many cultures still do.
For sure.
That's even our family culture, even our family line. It's like, did you ever hear the story about so and so in this troubling time or in this great time? And I don't know about you, but that's a quick time for me to sit down and shut up. Like, I want to know, like, because we forget that our family members and the people we love even had lives before we even existed. full lives. You know, your grandparents were young and dumb and made mistakes and did all these crazy things before you were ever born.
Yep.
By the time you're born, they're ready to babysit you because they've done all this living. That you meet them at this time in their life and you just think like, yeah, they're just my grandparents. But it's fascinating to hear their stories and how they got through them, and all the experiences that they had in those different times. And we will be those storytellers for our children too, for our
Definitely.
grandchildren, for all those to come. So as an artist though, I'm really curious, kind of like, what's your story? Maybe you could tell a little bit about you.
Definitely. So like I mentioned, I started in the arts pretty young. My dad was a graphic designer, artist. Years later, I worked in museums and in galleries. But what was truly the turning point for me, what made the whole idea of fine art and marketing click, was that after college, I ended up getting a job as a marketing director for a textile company. And it just so happened that that textile company was ran by artists, and they licensed a lot of different artists to design the designs for the fabrics. And being a young girl out of college, I was really frustrated that in school, I was never told how to sell my artwork, how to promote myself, how to start a business. I just knew how to create really nice things. And I would read countless books about being an artist and how to, sell my work. And everything kind of went back to, oh, you have to write an artist statement, or you have to be in a gallery, and this is how you reach out to a gallery. And I was just really frustrated. But when I got that job, I started learning all about marketing. I really dove deep. I had a team, and I got to see how other artists were actually making a full living with their artwork without being in galleries. They were selling prints online. They had these licensing contracts with the company. They had shops that they had. They even sold courses. And that just made that click in my head, that was like, wow, there's other ways with the internet to make money as an artist. And I just had this urge to just teach everyone. So I started telling all of my friends that were creative that you could do all of these cool things. And I started teaching them. I started telling them like, oh, why don't you try setting up a shop on Shopify, and you can do print on demand, or why don't you post these kind of pictures on Instagram and go ahead and say these kinds of things, and people are going to be more attracted to you and your artwork. And eventually I took the leap after telling so many friends how to promote their artwork, and decided to make a business out of it. And here we are now.
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's kind of the been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, and now I'm going to show you how to make the shirt.
Definitely.
I really really like how to you tried all those, traditional ways. So be in a gallery, write an artist statement, have all the right connections, do this, do that. And what it really came down to at the end of the day was humanizing your business and creating a connection. And I think that, regardless of what you're trying to connect over, that storytelling and knowing, the stories behind what you're promoting is so incredibly important, because it's, otherwise you can be just a commodity. A story makes you unique, it makes you human. So tell us your story.
My story as an artist, or as
As
a
an
as a businesswoman?
whichever one resonates with you most. When you're as an artist, what is the story that's sitting behind your art?
Well, for me, my art has become seeing my clients thrive. To me,
Mhm.
it's so fulfilling being able to see artists tell me like, when you told me, how to write my story in an email, or how to say certain things on social media, that gave me an aha moment in my head. And those are the things that excite me. The way that I design my programs, and the way that I tell my personal stories. I love in my emails, and just when I'm having Zoom calls with my clients, telling them, oh, when I was in school, this is what happened to me, and sharing all of these funny stories that would come up when I was trying to figure things out. That has become my medium. And and the result, the artwork, is seeing the artist succeed. I hope
So
that
what,
answered your question.
yeah. So what I really get from that is the art was the way you got in, and almost like you had to have the hard knocks so that you could become the teacher.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that now at this stage and phase in your life, the teacher is where you feel the most creative. You love being creative, helping other people get their creative work out. So
Yes.
it's a creative, it's not necessarily putting the paintbrush to the canvas anymore. It's more helping the artists that are doing the actual work be creative about how to make a living. So
Exactly.
it's creative. It's just I hear that completely, where it's like, yeah, I don't really do that part anymore, but I'm passionate about this part now. And this
For
is my
sure.
new creative endeavor. So what kinds of programs do you do?
So I have one-on-one coaching. And
Mm-hmm.
with the one-on-one coaching, I like to tell artists that I become your personal marketing director. And from beginning to end, I'm holding your hand and I'm telling you how you should position yourself. What are those core stories that you want to go ahead and use to promote your artwork? I look at your artwork and tell you what are the best ways of putting it out into the public, presenting it, which is a huge aspect of selling artwork, is the presentation. And through each process, you're learning a little bit more about yourself, but you're also learning about business, you're learning about marketing, you're learning about copywriting, which is a big aspect of
Mm.
storytelling. And by the end of the 12-week program, you are comfortable enough to go out there and talk about your work. You are selling your work online. You are reaching out to people for collaborations and for interviews, and you have the foundation to start a sustainable art career.
That
What
is
are
amazing.
what are some of the challenges, resistances you come across, and people who, they need to talk about their work, but gosh, they just don't know how, and I'm terrified.
A lot of the times it has to do with, I'm so shy. I don't feel comfortable talking about myself. Another one that I get often, since a lot of promotion now happens online, is I don't have a way with words. I don't know how to say these things. And it's like, you don't have to feel so uptight about writing. I think it's more about just seeing people as your friends, seeing your potential customers as your friends, and aligning your interests with the things that you like and being open about those things. And people that like those same things as you are going to connect with you.
What's one of the coolest stories you have ever pulled out of an artist about the art?
Oh, wow. There's one artist that she shared with me that when she was, I believe, in her 20s, she got to hang out with Keith Haring. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Keith Haring. He used to do a lot of graffiti in New York City and did these like funny, like dancing flat characters. It's kind of hard to explain this stuff through audio, but if you're not familiar with him, Google Keith Haring. He's very famous. And she said that she went to a party and Keith Haring was there and they had a whole conversation about art, and that was one of her like highlights of her art career. And she even has a picture with him. That's one of my favorite stories.
So that kind of inspiration through osmosis. I do believe in that.
Yes.
I've met many artists in my life too and have lots of pictures, and I'll do anything just to get close because I do believe in creative osmosis. Like just being near master artists does something and infuses you. It helps you. Like for her, it inspired her. She's so excited. Like all these things, and all this person's doing at this point in their career is just existing, but they still have this kind of creative influence that just seeps through just being in their presence. That's a really cool story.
Yeah,
So
I
any like quick tips or tricks like for people that are interested and maybe not ready, or like do you have any kind of quick 3 things you can share with our listeners if they're artists or budding artists or home artists on what's the quick and dirty way if they're not quite ready for the real long haul, Ray?
If they're not ready, the the things that I always recommend people is, first of all, you want to make sure that if you are promoting your artwork, especially on social media, you want to make sure that your pictures are great. You want to go ahead and have crisp pictures. I know it might seem obvious in the time we live in, but you want to make sure that your presentation is beautiful, that the edges are clean, that the picture is focused, and that it's just visually appealing. The second tip to that is that you want to go ahead and share some kind of story in the captions. Most of the time, what a lot of artists do is that they'll share a picture, and then at the bottom in the caption, it will just say the size of the art piece and the title. But in the time that we live in, we have the attention span of goldfishes. So you see an image of anything, you look at it, you're like, okay, this is nice, and you move on. So make sure to be open about your story. It doesn't have to be about your life. It could be about the artwork and what inspired it, or why you like certain colors, or what was the thought process you had to start a specific art piece. And then the third tip to that is, don't be afraid to interact with people and reach out to different people on social media. If you like somebody's work, go ahead and tell them. If you want to know more about how they got to where they are, go ahead and ask them. We live in a world that's so connected now that you don't have to do things on your own. You don't have to do all the guesswork. You can go ahead and reach out to people and get help. And that's already going to put you ahead of a lot of other creatives out there that aren't looking for help.
I love that. Yes, incredible tips. And yeah, LinkedIn has created a whole new world. There's also art networks. Depending on the type of art that you do, there's different ways you can connect with artists. Different ways you can connect with business people. People are more open now. On Clubhouse, you can go and hang out with people you didn't even imagine a million years you'd just hang out with on a Tuesday evening. But there's some great conversations having there. I think the kind of core of it is show your stuff. So you show your stuff well, whatever that stuff might be, and be able to connect a story to it. And then don't be afraid to share that story or ask for advice with people that have kind of been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, and are willing to help you make that t-shirt too.
Yes.
So if our listeners wanted to know more about you, where would they go?
So they can check out my website. It's www.menji.co. That's menji.co. You can also follow me on Instagram at menji.co. And if you have any questions or comments, you can send me an email at hi@menji.co.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for being on Business Therapy. It's been an absolute pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you.
This has been Business Therapy, healing businesses from the inside out through communication and emotional intelligence. I'm Diane Hansen, management consultant.
And I'm Christine Salvo, licensed marriage and family therapist, advanced certified mediator, and certified hypnotherapist. Thank you so much for listening today. Have a wonderful day.
Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. This is Business Therapy, healing businesses from the inside out through